Responding. Okay, there we go. Alright, here we go. Alright, you have to have, uh, my first name is Loretta, and this is Loretta Nash, and this is called Lore's Blog, and it's actually a combination of, I do have a Lore's blog that I do it through WordPress. It is, of course, it's called Lore's Blog, but you can find it at lore.blog, or, well, Lore, Lorgh .blog. That's where I show my artwork, and this right now, I'm just playing around with it. What I'm going to do is read some of my some papers that I have that my grandma wrote. You have to, now what I'm reading is from a person who did not graduate high school at all. She had to she only went as high as the third grade. So once she became 10, she had to go to work. Um, this is way back when things were all kind of weird and stuff, really old stuff. And my grandma Evalean, that's her name, Evalean, um, she wrote these stories for Mama, uh, Arby Faye. And yes, it's Arby, like the restaurant. Um, she wrote these stories, so I'm going to read from it, and it is in cursive because since this is back in the early 1900s, she had to learn how to write in cursive, because that's what they did back then. And you got to think, this is Mississippi. So this is like in the backwoods of Mississippi, where everybody is, educated to a certain point, and everybody had to go to work. All right, let me go ahead and start reading what. Now, I scanned these in, uh, made images of them. I actually have the originals, but I scanned these in the uh, computer back in 2007, maybe a little bit earlier, because my sister wanted to have them, and I misplaced them, and I've kept them. And I finally found them. But these are stories written by an older lady that had nothing but a third grade education, had a rough life. I mean, born just pretty much at the tipping point of the pandemic, the flu pandemic of 1918. So by the time she was 10, which would be 1928, when she was 10, uh, the depression was about to hit and everything. So she lived she lived up until 97. And so some of these stories she wrote was long ago. Okay, let me go ahead and start reading this right here. It looks like the paper that she got was just something, because it looks like a teacher's writing paper, but this paper is very, very old. Okay, let me read what she has. I'm uh I am writing this for my daughter Faye, who loves to hear a story, always asking me to tell her one. Okay? And then it says, I was born in a log cabin in the last months of World War II. No, World War One. Back back in the hills. Back in the hills. Okay, so I gotta translate this because, like as I said, my grandma only had a third grade education, and she's writing as what she hears, so I have to phonetically read everything. Okay. Uh, my earliest memory of is of my dad opossums hunting. Okay, of my dad possum hunting. Okay, and trapping. He shipped his fur to a big mail ordering house one morning. Okay, one morning I got up and Dad had went to his traps, finding a coon had duck find a grown mad duck that he had caught by, and then you get to think this paper is all torn. Uh, his feel and drowned in the mink trap. Okay, so he found a grown duck that had got caught by the trap and trap field and it drowned in the trap. He known who was he known who it was, and he had seen the mallard duck a few days before. The man who owned him told Dad how uh, much he gave him for him, how much money he gave for him. Yeah, that's what money gave for him, and what a fine duck he was. Dad not only trapped, but he owned a chomp possum dog, a champion possum dog, about half hound and half the prone boys stowed him out to hunt with stomach. Dad had to keep him chained almost all the time in the kennel a high on a high wind strong bet to big. Thus Dad's dog was named Rock. He was red, brown, and white. His father had the mate to Rock his name Round. He was black and tan. Of course, I lived in the log cabin years before I saw and had come through and cut a lot of lumber. Oh, the mill. Okay. And there were a few plank houses at the time. That thickened bin was blue, and it was quick to blurred of log, and a catal chumley black and lumber would have bun wood 20 miles over the road, still deep. 3 or 4 years after the cabin was built, I was moved in. Okay. A little confusing, but give me a minute. Okay, so they lived in the woods, and she was born in a log cabin, and Emil moved in. So they cut a bunch of trees, and Emil moved in, and she was talking about the dog, about the rock and its mate role that her granddad had, and she can remember bits and pieces of that. Okay, that's what I get. Okay. And then the houses began to be built. She started seeing plank houses, even though she lived in a log cabin. Okay. Woo, log cabin in 1918. Oh, so up until 19. So they lived in a log cabin. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Okay. A stone builder on one day when it had been years or this it run away and throttle over thing in all directions. No one was killed. Where the houses was, the clay was thin under. Okay, so they had okay, that was an accident. Apparently, give me a second. This thing's hurting. It's kind of sending a little shock. I don't like the idea of this little shock, and it bugs, and I get a little shock. Okay. Okay. I was looking at the time. We got before this segment is over. Okay. It ran away. Uh, all dreamed. No one was killed. Where the house was the day the clay was thin underneath was sand, so we couldn't have a well. Okay, so the clay was too thin under the house, and it was nothing but sand, and they couldn't have a well. Okay, one of the three, but kind with a windlass and a bucket over one was dug down in the sand. That night it fell in, so Dad dug another storm shelter and filled the well to with 5 feet of the cellar floor covered it with old planks. One day the dog went with Dad to his trap, and they trapped a skunk. He killed it and brought it. He led it to the house. A little kitten led it to the house. A little kitten we owned tried to cat the fur, so Dad hung it up over the log barn. But when he got it down to ship it to the tall down to ship, the tail was missing. Okay. Ooh, this is so hard And my grandma did not use punctuation. Oh, and okay, this is so this is where I'm gonna stop, and yeah, I'm gonna stop for a second, and I'll start it again in a bit.